being one who holds energy, there's been a pushback in my life many times, and there are pushbacks from humans, and maybe those that aren't in a human form, for those of us that are holding light and keeping frequencies to move to the next space. And I think that's a lot of what might be unseen by many who are on the outside. But it calls us to step forward, really. And when you share that I've done this before, I feel that so truly. And so I just want to thank you, because I feel that that message gives encouragement and a reminder to us. You mentioned our remembrance, and I feel it coming on board. So I'm very grateful for the acknowledgement of that. Do you have anything else you want to share with those who might have been or are experiencing that? Well, I'll term a challenge or struggle, because we feel it so much in our energy field, and it's something that those on the outside can't see.
Indeed. And so what we would add to that, and just to expand on what you said, is that in order to do this energy work, this frequency holding that you all are incarnating to do, you absolutely must be one who is highly sensitive in order to do that work. However, when a highly sensitive being incarnates into a world where there is much duality and much contrast and many lower frequencies, if you will, it can be very disruptive and very unsettling. And what adds to that is if the sensitive being is born into a family or an environment where the other beings within their family are not also sensitive, then it can be a very lonely existence indeed. And there are many sensitive beings who don't remember their pre-incarnational agreements, if you will, their divine blueprint, if you will. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing from our perspective. Every being remembers their divine blueprint in perfect and divine timing. And so there is a sense, and there is sometimes these time periods which may last many years, where the one who has agreed to do energy work or be a frequency holder will experience much darkness and maybe the emotional, energetic tones that accompany that, such as despair and shame and depression. However, that is not without purpose, because that is what's needed in order for you to be of assistance to those who are in that place. So you need to go through that and experience that and feel those energies in your system, so that when you do reach a higher place and you are reaching out your hand to assist those to the higher frequency, that you understand what they are experiencing and what they are feeling. It's a point of connection. Now, we mentioned in this session, you don't want to dip down into that frequency in order to establish connection. You want to reach out and pull them up into the higher frequency. But you must understand the density and the lower frequency in order to be the frequency holders that you are. The duality, the contrast is there on purpose so that you understand both and you know both. You could not know or understand those higher frequencies if you didn't also feel and experience the lower frequencies. You also wouldn't be able to have a client and be able to sense with your energy body where they are at energetically if you didn't have a sense of that spectrum, if you will. So the fact that you can feel energy is actually one of your greatest gifts as a sensitive being. However, what makes it difficult is, as we have mentioned, number one, being in that darker or denser lower frequency environment, and number two, being within a collective, whether that be family or a cultural or social collective where nobody understands you at all because they are not wired in the same way. So how do you remedy that is the question. So you have to take it upon yourself to, number one, honor who you are as a sensitive being, as a energetically sensitive being. First, honor who you are, and in no way do you have to change who you are to fit in. In fact, you want to do the opposite. You want to recognize who you are and honor that you are sensitive. That's the first step. And then the second step is know that there are many, many, many of other people like you out there. And it is up to you to start finding them and interacting with them and taking initiative to build your friendships and build your relationships and build your sense of community so that you create this sense of support for yourself. Now, many sensitive beings, many empaths, many introverts tend to deal with these lower frequencies by isolating themselves. In fact, the last few years of quote unquote isolation in some ways was very enjoyable for the sensitive people, right? However, it doesn't matter how sensitive you are, it doesn't matter how introverted you are still experiencing yourself through this human construct, and there is a great need within the human construct for human connection and human relationships and human interaction. That is a great need across the board that every human has. So it's okay to enjoy time to yourself. It's okay to enjoy isolation, but you still need connection. Now, what kind of connection you need as a sensitive person is you need a connection and community with others who are like you so that you can feel seen and heard and valued and understood, and you can trade tools and trade insights, if you will, on how to work with your sensitivity in a productive way. What you don't want to do in terms of those communities or interactions is start playing the victim card. And this is common, where a lot of sensitives start complaining or speaking about the woes of being sensitive. That's not actually productive at all. Now, we understand that it's difficult. We're not saying that it isn't, but you know, and we know that what you focus on expands, and what you focus on, you create more of. So why focus on the difficulties of being sensitive when you could focus on the gifts of being sensitive and the benefits of being sensitive and the incredible experiences one has when they are sensitive? Why not focus on that? And why not trade tips and tools and techniques that help you thrive and radiate as a sensitive being, rather than complaining about what's not working, if you will? Does that make sense to you?
Oh, absolutely. Even when you just talked about shifting the mindset to a lower, heavier perspective, I felt it within me. And I think that takes experience, but if I love that we're sharing this, because maybe people don't need to have such an intense experience. Because for myself, as a sensitive, if I'm not doing that now, but in the past when I would go there, it felt like I dipped so low that it took longer to get back up to where I was. And I just need to stop right when I feel it come on and say, no, I don't have to feel the whole heaviness of that, because I mentally already know the path forward, and that is not the way. And if I fall into it, it's like I'm going to be muddy, and then I have to clean myself to get back up.
Well, indeed, and we would add to that one fun game you could play with your human construct self that does like to complain, because let's face it, you are experiencing yourself as a human, and there is almost like a sense of fulfillment in complaining sometimes. So if you're going to go there, then go there, but we would say set a timer. So set a timer on your phone or on your watch. Okay, I'm going to give myself 10 minutes or 20 minutes to complain about being at this party last night, or being in this crowd last night, or being or the mass media, or whatever it is. There's many things to complain about as a sensitive being, but I'm going to set a timer. I'm going to purge that out of my system, maybe even write it down, and then at the end of the 20 minutes, I'm going to go pet my dog, or watch some funny videos, or do whatever it is in my toolbox that is uplifting and exciting, or maybe connect with a sensitive friend that uplifts you. There are so many things you can do to stay uplifted, but we also want to honor the fact that maybe you do need to purge something, but set a timer, set a time limit, so that it doesn't take over your entire beingness.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. And as one who's so sensitive to energy too, you had mentioned this, but it just was coming through. there's a part of like, okay, this is from my experience with the world, but when I'm working with others, and as you mentioned, if they try and pull you down, that is not supportive to anybody. So I'm really grateful that you share that. I think a lot of healers, empaths, light workers need that confirmation, because would you say that it's something somewhat of the past mindset that we have to feel all of the heaviness that others are experiencing to show that we're compassionate or that we care? But I'm feeling if I do that, it's taking me out of my frequency and out of the space of empowerment where I can support them. And so, I just wanted to share that. I was grateful you brought that through.
We would definitely agree with that. We would say what you always want to do if you really do seek to be of highest service, which you do, and many others listening do. You always want to be remaining connected to source energy rather than the being in front of you's energy, right? That is how, when that higher vibration or frequency of unconditional love is present, then that will take over, if you will, and eradicate and release those lower frequencies. But this is what we wish to add that's very important. It's very, very important and essential if you are a sensitive being, and especially if you are a sensitive being who is a healer or working with others in any sort of way. It is very important to be always examining the contents of your own consciousness, if you will, and constantly working within yourself to examine the issues within yourself, perhaps from past experience, that may need examining and releasing. And the reason for this is because that tendency that you mentioned of sensitive beings or empaths lowering their frequency to connect with others is very common. But the reason that occurs for many is because they are seeking to create connection based on an experience of their past where they didn't have connection. So they are seeking to meet a need from their, based on a psychological imprint from their past. They are seeking to create connection, and so they do so by connecting energetically with anyone in the vicinity, so to speak. That is very common with sensitives. And so a sensitive, one of the most powerful lessons for all sensitives to learn is how to create connection without dipping down to connect with those who may be on a different frequency than they are. In fact, you stay connected to your own highest frequency, to source energy, and then you play around with still creating connection with those around you, but not having to dip down energetically to do so, if that makes sense. It's an energetic way of creating connection, but it's not the healthiest one, if you will. But it's very, very common, and it's even celebrated, meaning, oh, you are in pain? Let me dip down and take on your pain. That's very common in terms of the more sensitive people out there. It's just not, in the long run, a person who does that over the course of years will eventually see the repercussions of that in their physical form, because it's very draining on the energy body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, wow. I'm just like, no, you probably can't see me, but I'm bobbing my head over here in full. Like, I'm just really feeling it, and I've experienced it, and I've seen that. And so thank you for sharing about it, because it's like, let's stay where we are, connect in a higher space and pull each other up. Yeah.
You also need to recognize, as a sensitive being, this is all in the realm of getting to know oneself, and not only getting to know oneself, but also honoring oneself. But also when it comes to being more sensitive, you also need to be very honest with yourself and very aware in terms of what is elevating you and what is draining you. And being very crystal clear on those two things, and knowing and standing up for yourself when someone asks you to do something that you know is going to drain your energy. And if you say yes to that, why are you saying yes to that? Now, that may be this is why we're saying you're always looking within yourself and always releasing limiting beliefs and emotional charges that are no longer serving you. But if, for example, you are that type of person who just wants to please people, and so you say yes to everything, or you're going to experience, again, an energy drain from forcing yourself to do things constantly that drain your energy. So there are things, and this is individual for each person. We're not going to say this thing overall is elevating and this thing overall drains, because each person is an individual. It's up to you to get to know yourself and then to honor who you are in terms of what is elevating for you and what is draining. You can even write them down, make lists, so that it's very clear, so that next time someone calls you up and asks you to do something and you're used to saying yes, but you know that that is not honoring to who you are, you know, you're going to have that written down on your list of, oh, this drains me, and then you're going to practice the skill of saying no thank you to that.
Yes, I recently went through a revamping of that, a whole, I'll just be like energetic boundary with others and with my time, and holding myself accountable, and feeling this shift that you've spoken about, that, you know, Karen and I have been feeling shifts and flowing into a new space. And within myself, I've got the family life, you know, the human stuff, and then my work, if you call it, or my what I'm offering, how I'm showing up in service, and I feel that is shifting as well. So as you mentioned this, I'm also getting the message, just like reconfirm and clicking. It's all aligning that what we offer in our services also should be what brings the joy and helps us lift higher, even if it's not the way other people do it, or what, you know, some might say this is the path, but we know in our heart and ourself, and moreover in our energy, what elevates us. And would you say
Yes.
that's the way?
We would definitely agree with that. We would say that what drains most sensitives is the word should, because the reality is that most sensitives are born into an environment where those around them are not sensitive, or, you know, when they go to school, the reality is that most of the people they're interacting with are not like them, and so they form this word very early on in their experience of should. I should be more like this person. I should do that because that person can do that and I can't. I should read, and then when you're an adult, it translates to, well, I should be doing this because that person, I should be doing this in my business because that person is doing it. Or, do you know what I'm saying? So the word should is actually an enemy to the sensitive. And the inner work in regards to that is to start to examine where within yourself are you still holding on to the false belief that you should be different than who you are. Now, it's understandable why you would think that way when you are born sensitive in an insensitive realm, but that is a belief, a false belief that you can release in this moment. You don't need to be anything other than you are in this moment. You were born, created, the divine created you perfectly as you are. You don't need to shift yourself or anything that you do in order to be like anyone else. And so eradicate that word should, and you will notice, as a sensitive, to all the sensitives listening, that you will be elevated instantly and liberated from the false perception that you should be or do things differently than you are doing them. It's almost comical when you recognize how that false narrative has been running the show for perhaps many years. But once you recognize it and you challenge it and you release it, then you're liberated. And then we'll just add to that, in the terms that we speak of most are the terms of resonance or dissonance. Because when you are sensitive, you can clearly feel the difference between resonance and dissonance in your energy field. And so when it comes to making decisions or running your business, or even just doing daily human things that you do, like shopping for food or whatever it is that you do in order to run your lives and operate in this reality, there are many decisions to be made. And so how do you know which decision to make? Well, you start making decisions with your energy field. You start making decisions not based on who you should be or what you should do, but you start making decisions based on, okay, if I have a decision, A versus B, well, what feels more resonant in my energy body? Meaning, what feels more alive? What feels more exciting? What feels more passionate? And there's always, doesn't matter what decision it is, if it's a huge life decision or if it's a small decision as to what shampoo to buy at the store, there's always going to be a sensation of one being more resonant in your energy body than the other. This isn't a thinking process, it's a feeling process. And so that is how we suggest that you go about operating in this realm from this point forward, is keeping this sense of resonance or dissonance active in your mind at all times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much. I can really, really feel this. And I was hearing celebrating who we are, not that we should do anything anyway, celebrate our uniqueness. And when we recognize this is who I am, and I don't have to judge, like you're saying, you feel the energy, you feel the resonance. There's no need to analyze or judge it. If you feel it's for you, just go with it. And I feel like because of the programming is what I've noticed. And so it's breaking free of that programming. And those of us that are sensitive are somewhat more sensitive to the programming. Mm-hmm. So I just feel like giving like a big clap to everybody who looks at this and steps forward. And I've seen myself do that, but I feel like I'm still continuing. It's a continuation to come into that space where we are feeling comfortable of going with the resonance and how our energy responds. I want to say how our heart reacts, but for me, it's more than my heart. It's my entire field can feel when something is in resonance.
It is your energy field. So the difference between the old way of, let's say, making a decision and the new way of making decision is the old way you would think about it. You would maybe write some lists of pros and cons. You'd analyze it. You'd think it through. The new way of making decision, which is actually much faster and much more efficient, is to simply feel within your and it is your energy field. It is your energy body to simply feel where is the aliveness. Where is the aliveness? It's not a thinking process. It's just so you bring in option A into your mind. That's the only purpose of the mind in this particular exercise, is you bring that option into the mind and then you notice your energy body. And then you put that aside and you bring in option B and you notice your energy body. And remember that you are being assisted by your higher self and all these guides that surround you. And so they are giving you assistance too as to what would be the path of the highest resonance for you.
Yeah. And very much in a personal way. And when we were talking with Gaia some time ago, a minute ago, traveling, I've been traveling quite a bit, but we're in a space where we're looking where to move, and that's the biggest thing, is where do I feel alive? Mm-hmm. Where do I feel the resonance? And still in the space of exploring that. But this can be used in the moments of really tiny things, like what should I eat for dinner? And, career choices and moves and big decisions. So I really am grateful for that confirmation, and just like it's like a reboot, it's a refresh. It's brought my mind back to, yes, let's remember the most efficient way to make these decisions can be by letting the energy speak to us. So yeah, that's really
And when you make decisions in that way, you're also acknowledging and aligning with the part of yourself that is everything, the oneness, if you will. Because if everyone made decisions in this way, we would all be interacting and aligning and flowing with the highest resonance for everyone involved, right? So it's the new way in terms of the new earth that is birthing and unfolding. This is the new way that the future human will operate in terms of being guided by the flow of energy, not by the constructs in the mind. Now, the constructs in the mind are very much based on conditioning and imprints from past experience, right? So they can't really accurately, if you think about it, they can't really accurately help you make a decision that is in alignment with life force as it flows through you. But your energy body is a manifestation of life force, so of course, this is a new way of making decisions, much more efficient way of making decisions.